Good morning. Welcome to Factotum Build. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel. Today we are going to be doing a video on our nearly 10-year-old LG Multi-F Max mini split. This system I installed myself back in late summer of 2016. Right now it's December of 2025, so I guess that puts us, or 9.5 years old for the LG system. And so I kind of wanted to just run through the system, talk about what I like about it, what I don't like about it, discuss the reliability. There is a lot of discussion just randomly. People have quite a few opinions that this style equipment is unreliable. I can only speak to my equipment. Doing a quick tour here, this is what we have in the kitchen area. That's an 18,000 BTU ceiling unit. That is an 18,000 BTU wall unit. And then if we go downstairs, I have an identical 12,000 BTU wall unit, and that does the entire basement living area right here. And then inside this is the indoor unit. So with this LG, rather than the lines connecting individually outside, 6 different lines connecting, what they use is this indoor unit. I only have 3, but you get up to 4, and you just connect everything in here, and then it relays 2 lines out to the outdoor unit. My original intention here is I have a 2,000 square foot house that has a footprint of 1,000 square feet. So the basement is a walkout and has a bedroom, has a living room area, and then the upstairs has a bedroom and a living room area. And both, there's bathrooms on each floor. We have in-floor radiant heat in the basement that is fed by a propane boiler. And then the boiler feeds baseboard registers upstairs. When we moved into this house, which would have been over 10 years ago, the owner had just come out of 2014, which was the propane shortage in our area, and I think it was nationwide, where prices shot up to $5-6 a gallon. He was talking about having a $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 propane bill because the pre-buy, they ripped up the contract saying, we can't supply it, force majeure. Keeping that in the back of my mind, I wanted to come into, at least having a backup fuel source for heat to have in this house. We have propane, so I have fireplaces that operate on propane. I have a boiler that operates on propane, but having if there is a propane shortage, having another heat source that could potentially help us get through. Now, unfortunately, the system that I bought, it specifically is an LMU 480HV. So that's a 54,000 BTU unit for heating, and then a 48,000 BTU unit for cooling. And it can have up to 8 heads on it. I only operate 3. The system has overall worked. Now, I installed it to the T as far as the directions from LG. And I went out and I had purchased, this wasn't just a slam bam install it. Like, I went out and I bought nitrogen. I bought, what else did I buy? So I did not braze the lines. I bought a flaring kit tool because at the time, apparently the factory flares on these line kits are marginal. And so I bought a yellow jacket flaring tool that was meant for R410. What else did I buy? I bought a Micron vacuum gauge. So I already had a vacuum pump, but the Micron vacuum gauge helped me verify that I was pulling a vacuum that was deep enough. And at the time I was on the fence with that, but that was an invaluable tool. Like where I thought I had pulled a deep vacuum, the Micron Guage was telling me no, I had not. And that's where the nitrogen comes in, because that's where I was pumping the, I ended up doing a triple evacuation where, you know, I basically pull a vacuum, release the vacuum and put in nitrogen. And I don't remember put in like 60 PSI or something. I don't know, what the gauge was. Put it in, release the nitrogen, suck it down, did that. By the third time, I was able to have the Micron Guage drop to 250. So, and that was before I did the nitrogen. The lowest I was getting was like 950, somewhere in that range. More recently, I have been using propane to heat the house because, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it hasn't been that much money, but it is still nice to have. So more recently, I had the floor on too long, and I ended up going through propane a little faster than I probably should have. One of the problems with the propane is, you know, you buy a certain amount, and I have 1,000 gallons on site, and unfortunately, you just really don't know how bad the winter is going to be. And so right now, with temperatures at night dropping, you know, into 6-10 below, I end up going through the propane a little faster. So this weekend right now, I'm exclusively using the mini split, and you know, it's working good. Like, we're 9.5 years old. Knock on wood, I have not had any sort of leaks and stuff, but and I mean that knock on wood. So one of the downfalls people always talk about with these mini splits is that the maintenance on them. So about once a year, I pull down the, I go and I give it a hard clean. And by that I mean, like, I clean the fan blades. The fan blades end up developing kind of like dust and mold and just not really healthy. And so I clean that all up. They have like small filters that slide in. I usually clean those up every 6 months. And then I do a hard clean on each head once a year. And it depends on how much I use it. You know, if I don't use it all that much, then it might skip to every other year. But I generally do it once a year, where I clean all the heads. And there's 3 heads, so you do the math. The only problems that I've had with the system is on the 12,000 BTU unit in the basement, I had to replace the blower wheel. And that blower wheel was likely damaged from myself when I cleaned it. I probably ranked on it a little harder than I should have, and it ended up wobbling and breaking. And so I had to replace the actual plastic fan component to it, which, you know, wasn't all that horrible. That's been my only thing. As far as operation goes, you can put these in, and they give you a remote to turn on and off, but it's not a remote it's not your typical operation where you set the remote at 72 and the thing turns on and off and it takes you up to that temp. They use fuzzy logic, and fuzzy logic basically says we'll get it within like 8 degrees. So if I set it to 70, it's entirely possible that the system could run up to, like, you know, 74, 75 before it flat out turns that head off. You're sit there, you're baking. The reverse can happen with air conditioning. It can go quite chilly. So people often talk about, well, you got to size these things like you normally would, blah, blah, blah. And the reason I overshot, obviously 48,000 BTU is quite a bit for a 2,000 square foot house. The reason why I did that, though, was I was looking for heating. So when I was looking at the engineering manuals for this equipment, they're showing down the operational temperature range is -4 to 122 degrees. Well, at a -4 or 5 degrees Fahrenheit, the equipment output is only like, I think it's only like 18,000 BTU or 24,000. I don't know. It derates substantially. So you have to have an understanding of what sort of BTU requirements your house has at 5 degrees or -4, and then try to size the equipment for that. And so that's what I did. I ran, it wasn't technically a manual J, but I ran sort of a cheater app where I had a general understanding that, at 5 degrees, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I basically chose this 48,000 BTU unit. In the summertime, we're definitely can get oversized, but this equipment does have the capability of ratcheting back to, I believe, about 18,000 BTU. So that's the main benefit of it, is variable refrigerant flow, and it can turn down the compressor so that the BTU output is only less than half of what it's rated for as far as a max. Another thing that I did do was there is a setting on the board that I turned on, which before this, if I turned it on, the system would really wind up and it would be loud. And then as things started to heat up or you met your thresholds, then it would back off and it wouldn't be quite as loud. This one is basically going, hey, I don't want it to heat up quite as fast or cool down quite as fast. I want a little bit more of a controlled operation. They have a kind of a marketing name for it. I don't remember what it is. Another component that I did end up buying off of eBay used was thermostats. So I bought these probably 2 years in. There are sensors in each head, and as the airflow comes in, the system will use those sensors to do whatever it needs to do in its algorithm. It doesn't work all that great. It overshoots it as far as comfort and control. I don't know. I look at it as it's kind of a third world system. Okay, it's meant to be put in a box and you plug it in out in the jungle. It turns on and it works. Okay, so but I did have the option of plugging in external thermostats, and I found these on eBay for a good price, so I bought 3 of them. They provided a substantial better control of the system, and I was able to set it up so that the temperature that the system uses is off the actual thermostat, not off inside there. And so each head now, it controls a lot better. And so that's where we're at. As far as energy consumption in the wintertime, I've got this thing dialed in now where I mentioned in this other room, I did not have the heat on, but I have the fan on in this room. Now, one of the things if you look at the diagnostic data of these heads, in the heat mode, they always have refrigerant going through them to some degree. And the EEV allows, show like a 30 as a step. Whereas if you have a head on low, it might show like a 52 or a 60. So it's a very small amount of refrigerant. So you can turn the fan on low and you'll have a very tempered amount of heat coming out that allows the system to, my goal here, I guess, with what I'm doing is that I have one head on that's calling for heat at the lowest level, and it's colder down there, so it kind of requires a little bit more heat for comfort. That heat rises, and then upstairs I just have one head that's putting out, I don't know what the actual BTU would be, but we'll call it half. Half of an 18,000 BTU unit. Maybe it's only putting out 5 or 7, but it keeps the house comfortable at 13 degrees. And then, at 5 degrees, maybe it all depends on what the activity of the house is. Electricity bills in the winter that are anywhere from $60 to $120 just for heating. I don't think that's really all that bad. And from my understanding, run the heating system in a consistent manner where I can say, well, this month it cost me this amount of money. Like this weekend, I'm just running it, and then I'll switch to the boiler system because I will be, in and out. So if you're interested in any of the diagnostic information here, I'll pull up the information and I'll just kind of talk about it. I don't have my other camera right now, so I can't really show this live data, but LG, I bought a piece of hardware that plugs into the outdoor unit that provides a Wi-Fi connect, and then I downloaded the LGMV business app, and they've redone it, but the new app essentially works the same, and it does some nice graphing, so like you could leave it running and let it check over time and see what it's doing. It gives you codes if there's any codes going on. That is kind of what I have, and I really like that stuff. It helped me understand a little better of what it was doing, or sometimes it would vibrate in the basement like really loud, and you're like, is this thing gonna explode? What's going on? Well, it's on the upper end of the pressure, and then it realizes it's on the upper end of the pressure, and it starts ratcheting back. So it's been helpful. Would I buy it again? Yes, I would buy it again. However, it's a lot more money now than it was before. The LMU 480 HV, they don't sell anymore. It's now an HHV, which is their hyper heat. So it goes to -15, and I think it's like double. I think it's like $5 or $6 grand for it, for just the outdoor unit. And that doesn't include the indoor pieces. The other thing that I might do a little differently is on this upstairs, I think I would have purchased, the way my upstairs is set up, I could have bought, it's not a wall unit, it's not a ceiling unit, it's a ducted unit. I could have put that in the attic to feed the kitchen, and I could have used it to feed the living room. It would have all run at the same time. It would have been like one less item to maintain. There is a little bit of an energy hit to it, if I remember correctly, but that's the only thing I would have done differently. And then as far as the basement goes, we have a 12,000 BTU unit down there. I would have actually moved, I should have bought two 6,000 BTU units, one in the living room, one in the bedroom. The 12,000 BTU unit down there is way more than it needs generally. Although it's matched pretty good in the heating in the wintertime, but cooling in the summer is like, it's way overdone. And then, so there's just a lot of different operation hacks that you can use to kind of keep the comfort. And I know for a lot of people, they just want to press one button, turn it on, walk away, and be comfortable. So this is definitely not the system for quite a few people. As far as reliability goes, I know when I went into installing this, a lot of information that I gathered was that it's not forgiving for shortcuts and mistakes. All my lines I blew out with nitrogen to make sure like little pieces of copper that might be floating on the ends were gone. Nylog, that's what I used, Nylog to help seal them up, 250 microns. I made sure it held, and used nitrogen to help get there, because it was an expansive line set, and it was in the summer, and the system's not forgiving for moisture. Obviously R410 with the oil that they use it becomes corrosive, so people are just slamming these lines together. There's a little bit of moisture in it, and it ends up becoming acidic and takes everything out. I went into it understanding that it's not forgiving for installation, and so I've only had one line that kind of plugged up with water. Other than that, I actually have the lines, they go to an eave, and the water actually drips outside. So it works out pretty good. I haven't had too many issues, knock on wood. So that's my 9.5-year update on my LG Multi-F Max Mini Split. I guess the only thing that I'm a little saddened about, I would like to put one in my garage. I have another garage I would like to put one in, but they've become so spendy that I've kind of had to slow down on doing some of that. So, because I would like, a piece of equipment that operates in the -15, -20 range. Going forward, it looks like there's some more options opening up with the monoblock, where it uses, instead of heating up the air, it heats up water, and then you can pipe that in through like a radiant loop, that type of thing. I would like to try something like that, and I've been keeping my eye open for some more affordable equipment. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel.